You close the door behind you. Maybe it's a bedroom door. Maybe a car door in a supermarket car park, where you sit for a few minutes longer than you need to. Or maybe it's only the click of headphones settling over your ears on a crowded train. Whatever it is, something changes. For the next hour, nobody knows exactly where you are. Nobody needs anything from you. Nobody is reading your face. And your whole body loosens. You've probably paid money for this feeling. A hotel room to yourself. A walk taken deliberately alone. A morning when the house is empty, and you move through it slowly, like someone visiting a museum after hours. We call it recharging. We call it peace and quiet. We treat it as the most ordinary reward a life can offer. It is not ordinary. It is one of the strangest things a human being has ever been able to do. Because for almost the entire history of our species, there was no door. There was no room. There was no hour in which nobody knew where you were. And being alone was not rest. Being alone was the first stage of dying. Which raises a strange question. How did a creature that could not survive a single winter by itself end up craving the exact condition that used to kill it? The answer runs back through 300,000 years, and it does not end where you think. It ends in your bloodstream. Start outside our species. Among the great apes alive today, exactly one lineage lives alone. Not the gorilla, not the chimpanzee, not the bonobo. The orangutan, the oldest branch of the family, split off from the rest of us around 14 million years ago, living in the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra, where fruit arrives so unpredictably that a group would starve. So the orangutan does not form one. Females hold separate ranges. Males roam. An infant stays with its mother for about 8 years, and then walks off into the trees to be alone for the rest of its life. Which proves something useful. Solitude is available to an ape. It's on the menu. It is simply not on ours. In 2009, the anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY published a book called Mothers and Others, and at its center is an observation so small it sounds like nothing. Chimpanzee mothers will not let anyone else hold a newborn. Neither will gorillas. In the wild, an ape mother keeps her infant against her own body for months, and other females who come close are watched with something near dread. Human mothers hand the baby over. Not after a year. Within hours. In every foraging society ever described, a newborn is passed to a grandmother, an aunt, an older sister, sometimes to a woman already nursing another child, who nurses this one too. HRDY's term for it is cooperative breeding, a species where the young are not merely watched but fed by adults who did not give birth to them. Around 9% of the world's 10,000 bird species live this way, roughly 3% of mammals. And us, no mammal has ever produced young as helpless, for as long as we do. A human infant cannot cling, cannot follow, cannot feed itself for years. It is an unfinished animal handed to a group and completed by them. Somewhere after 2 million years ago, this lineage made a bet that there would always be others. Every one of us is the descendant of that bet paying off, without a single miss, for 100,000 generations. Picture a woman in East Africa, sometime in the last 100,000 years. It is 4 hours after she has given birth. She is shaking, hollowed out, more tired than you have ever been. And she does the thing no other ape would do. She holds the child out and someone else takes it. By the time the sun goes down, that infant will have been held by 8 or 9 people. It will have slept on 3 different chests. Someone will have chewed food soft and passed it over. Every one of those people is a reason it is alive. And not one of them is its mother. But that only solves infancy. It does not solve the other 70 years. For that, look at the closest living picture we have. The Hadza live around Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania, and Frank Marlowe spent years there before publishing the numbers in 2010. They are not living fossils, they are modern people with a modern history, and they deserve to be described as such. But they are among the few societies still making a living the way every human being made a living until about 12,000 years ago. The average Hadza camp holds about 30 people. 30. That is the whole world. There is no door in a Hadza camp. There is no room. You sleep within arm's reach of other bodies. You wake because someone else woke. You eat what other people carried back, and what you carry back does not stay yours. Camp membership shifts constantly. People arrive, people leave, but the arithmetic never changes. You are always inside a small number of people who can see you, and there are no chiefs, no police, no courts, no jails, no punishment as we would recognize it. So what happens to a man who is cruel or lazy or a thief? Nothing dramatic. People simply leave. They pick up, they walk, they join another camp a day away. The worst thing that could happen to your ancestors was not violence. It was that everyone quietly decided to be somewhere else. In 1992, Robin Dunbar, then at University College London, published a paper in the Journal of Human Evolution comparing brain structure with group size across 38 primate species. He drew a line through the data, extended it to human brains, and got about 150. That number became famous, and it deserves the skepticism it has collected. In 2021, a team at Stockholm University reran the analysis and got wildly different answers depending on the method. But notice what nobody argues about. No side of that debate proposes that ancestral humans lived among thousands of strangers. The dispute is whether the ceiling is 100 or 200 or 500. The dispute is about the size of a small number. For 300,000 years, you knew everyone you would ever meet. And everyone you would ever meet knew you, which sounds warm, until you turn it over. A world where everyone knows you is a world where nothing you do is unseen. Your ancestors were never unobserved. Not while eating, not while grieving, not while sleeping. Reputation was not a social nicety for them. Reputation was the machinery that fed them when they could no longer feed themselves. Ethnography tells you how people live now. For proof of what happened then, you need bone. Shanidar Cave, in the Zagros Mountains of Iraqi Kurdistan. In 1957, an American archaeologist named Ralph Seletsky lifted a Neanderthal skeleton out of that floor, an individual who lived somewhere between 45 and 70,000 years ago. The catalog of what had happened to him is hard to read. A crushing blow to the left side of the face, which probably blinded that eye. A withered right arm, eventually lost at the elbow. Damage to the right leg. A healed fracture in the foot that would have given him a heavy, painful limp. Bony growths through both ear canals. Eric Trinkoz and Sebastian Villat confirmed these would have left him profoundly deaf. Every one of those injuries shows healing. None of them killed him. He lived into his 40s, which for a Neanderthal was old age. Now hold that picture. A one-armed, half-blind, deaf man with a limp. In a landscape full of leopards and hyenas. In an economy built entirely on hunting large animals at close range. He did not feed himself. He could not have. Someone carried food to him and kept doing it for years, possibly for decades, and nothing in the ground suggests he ever paid it back. And here is what should stop you completely. He is not the exception in that cave. Healed trauma is normal across the Neanderthal skeletal record. What we are looking at is not a single act of kindness. It is a standard operating procedure. Southern Italy. 1963. In a limestone cave in Calabria called Grotta del Romito, excavators opened an oval pit barely 1.5 meters long, and found 2 people laid inside it, side by side. One had a rare skeletal condition, the earliest known case of dwarfism in the human record, roughly 11,000 years old. Whether that person survived because of care has been argued in the journals for 40 years. One of the original authors later withdrew the claim. Ancient DNA published recently, taken from the dense bone of the inner ear, established that the 2 were first-degree relatives. The debate about what it proves is still running, and it should be. But leave the argument aside and look at the pit. These 2 were not placed near each other. One head rests against the other's cheek. One arm lies across the other's shoulders. Somebody knelt on a cave floor at the end of the Ice Age and made certain that these 2 would not be apart. And this is where it stops being about individuals. 1965, central Ukraine. A village called Mezhirek, about 70 miles from Kiev. A farmer digging out his cellar strikes something enormous, the lower jaw of a mammoth. Archaeologists follow it down and find 4 structures built from mammoth bone. Skulls, jaws, tusks, ribs, hundreds of them, stacked and interlocked into rings of 12 to 24 square meters. Recent radiocarbon work by Wei Chu of Leiden University and Pavlo Shidlovsky of Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev, dating small animal bones from inside the structure rather than the mammoth bone itself, places one of these buildings at around 18,000 years old. The coldest stretch of the last ice age. Picture this. It is February on that plain. There are no trees. The wind has had nothing to break it for 300 miles. The air outside is far below freezing, and it will be that way for months. Inside a dome of mammoth bone and stretched hide, there is a fire. And there are people. Bodies close enough to touch. Someone coughing. A child asleep against a chest that is not its mother's. Someone is awake, feeding the fire. Someone is always awake. A mammoth skull weighs more than a person. Nobody carried it alone. Nobody lifted it alone. That structure is not just shelter. It is a physical record of a group deciding to survive together, one impossible weight at a time. It is among the oldest architecture we have, and the first thing it proves is plurality. So, back to the door. The late John Cacioppo, at the University of Chicago, spent a career on this and arrived somewhere that sounds gentle and is not. Loneliness, he argued, is not a character defect and not a modern mood. It is a signal. It belongs to the same family as hunger and thirst and pain. Hunger says find food. Thirst says find water. Loneliness says get back to the group because out here by yourself you are meat. If that is true, the alarm should fire even when it is wrong. It does. In 2011, a team led by Leon Corina at the University of Chicago went to South Dakota and studied 95 Hutterites, a communal agrarian society where people farm together, eat together, and are almost never physically by themselves. Everyone wore a wrist monitor for a week. The people who felt lonelier had measurably more broken sleep. Not shorter sleep, broken sleep, and it held after controlling for depression, anxiety, and stress. Notice what that means. These are people surrounded by their community from morning until night. Being surrounded was not enough. The brain was not counting bodies in the room. It was asking a different question: is anyone watching over me? And when the answer came back as no, it refused to go all the way under. Micro-awakenings. Dozens of tiny surfacings you never remember in the morning. That is a century 300,000 years old. Standing a watch nobody ever told it to stand down from. It runs deeper than sleep. Stephen Cole at UCLA, working with John Capitanio at the California National Primate Research Center and with Cassiopo, published work in 2015 on gene expression in white blood cells, in 141 older adults, and in rhesus macaques. In lonely humans and lonely monkeys, they found the same signature. Genes for inflammation turned up. Genes for antiviral defense turned down. And when the lonely macaques met a virus, they did worse. That is not a metaphor. That is an immune system reading your social position and rebalancing itself for a different category of danger, wounds instead of infections. Because a body alone on the savannah is far more likely to be bitten than to catch something from a crowd. Your cells are still budgeting for the teeth. Cole's summary of it is the part that should land hardest. What matters at the level of gene expression is not how many people you know. It is how many you feel close to. And in 2010, Julian Holt-Lundstad at Brigham Young University pooled 148 studies, covering 308,000 people, followed for an average of 7.5 years. Those with strong social ties had roughly 50% better odds of still being alive at the end. Comparable to quitting smoking. Larger than obesity. Larger than exercise. So ask the question one more time. How did a creature that could not survive alone end up craving the thing that used to kill it? It didn't. That was the wrong question all along. You do not crave solitude. You crave safety. For 300,000 years those two words meant the same thing because safety was other people, and there was nothing else it could be. Your ancestors' safety had a face. Yours has a lock, a wall, a supermarket, a thermostat, a number you can call at 3 in the morning. You belong to the first humans in history who can buy safety without buying company. And the moment safety could arrive from somewhere else, other people stopped being the price of living and became optional. That is what the door is, not a rejection of your ancestry. The first machine in 300,000 years that lets a human being rest without a crowd around them. But nobody uninstalled the alarm. So solitude turns out to be young. Younger than farming. Younger than writing. Younger than the wheel. Every ancestor you have, going back further than you can count, lived and died without one private hour, and you can have as many as you want this afternoon for free. Sit with that for a moment. This is the gap you actually live in. The room is safe and your body does not entirely believe it. The lock works and something older than the lock keeps checking. You can be surrounded by people and feel the alarm anyway, because it was never listening for bodies. It was listening for whether anyone would come. That is why you can close every door in the house and still come awake at 3 in the morning for no reason at all. Something in you is still standing at the edge of the firelight, counting the shapes, making certain everyone came back. Your ancestors never got an hour alone. Not one. You get all of them. Just know what the ache is on the nights it turns up. It is not a flaw in you. It is a message. 300,000 years old. Still arriving. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, about the gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next one.